I'm Linda, 30 years old. Not too long ago, I worked as a pharmacy clerk, but now I'm on maternity leave, raising my 3-month-old daughter. My husband, John, works in the medical field. We met through a colleague of his, dated for 3 years, got married, and then our daughter was born. Originally, we planned to rent a small apartment and live happily as a family of 3. However, my mother-in-law kept insisting that we live with her. My father-in-law passed away from an illness a few years ago, and now she lives alone in their house. My husband has an older brother, 3 years his senior. Originally, the plan was for his brother to take over the family business. However, they've always had a rocky relationship with their mother. His brother loved drawing and wanted to work in the animation industry. Despite their mother's objections, he moved to Boston to pursue his dream. Well, my mother-in-law has always been a bit of a meddler. She's the type who needs to know everything that's going on. When my brother-in-law would finish his part-time job a bit late, she'd call his workplace just to check if he was still there. No matter how many times we asked her to stop, she'd cry and say, "I'm just worried about you. Why would you say that to me?" Eventually, brother-in-law got so fed up that he moved out right after high school. I can't blame him. I would have done the same. It wasn't just brother-in-law. My husband also had his fair share of issues with mother-in-law's behavior. They had a lot of conflicts over the years. To this day, mother-in-law can't seem to understand. She'd say, "He's such a disappointment. How could he betray his parents' expectations?" Every time we met, she'd bring it up, and it was getting old. With brother-in-law gone, mother-in-law kept saying she was lonely and wanted us to live with her. While moving in together was a big ask, I felt bad seeing her cry. My husband's family home was in the countryside with a lot of land. They had built a house there, thinking brother-in-law would eventually live in it, so we decided to move there. Since we'd be neighbors, we'd set some ground rules. "We might be family, but don't interfere with our lives. Don't come into our house without asking. Stick to the rules, okay?" Knowing mother-in-law, she'd probably want to be involved in our lives. I could already see the eagerness in her eyes. But we couldn't let her disrupt our happiness. Thankfully, my husband was firm with her, and she reluctantly agreed, saying, "All right, I understand." Maybe she realized it wouldn't be in her best interest for us to leave, so she listened to my husband. For a while, she really did keep her distance. She'd call before visiting to see our daughter, and things seemed to be going well. I started to think that maybe this could work. But I didn't realize that this was just the calm before the storm. Our daughter had severe colic and cried loudly every night. We tried feeding her, changing her diaper, and everything else, but nothing worked. "It's okay. What's the matter, Jennifer?" Holding my crying daughter. I gently pat her back. I remembered a friend telling me that when her baby had severe colic, she'd take her for a drive. I tried it, and while my daughter would fall asleep in the car, she'd wake up as soon as we got home. It wasn't really helping. As if that wasn't stressful enough, there's been another issue lately. Mother-in-law has started making surprise visits in the middle of the night, especially when my husband is working late. On this particular night, my husband was on a late shift. Despite it being past 1 a.m. and my daughter crying loudly, mother-in-law showed up again. "Do you even know what time it is? It's so disruptive to have her crying this loud. Make her stop." She was yelling at my 3-month-old daughter to be quiet. "Hey, what are you doing? Please be quiet. You're scaring Jennifer, and she won't stop crying." I was sleep-deprived and frustrated, so I snapped back at mother-in-law. We had agreed she wouldn't interfere when we moved in, but lately she's been coming over more and more, especially when my husband isn't around. If this continues, I'll talk to my husband, and we might just leave. Being a new mom was already challenging, and mother-in-law's behavior was making it even harder. The next day, I considered telling my husband about the incident, but he came home looking exceptionally tired, so I held back. Time flew by with the demands of childcare, and before I knew it, my husband was working another night shift. That night, my daughter's crying was particularly intense. In my desperation to soothe her, I didn't notice mother-in-law entering our house. I sensed the bedroom door opening and turned to see mother-in-law walking in uninvited. Whoa! I was so startled to see her that I let out a surprised shout. Suddenly, I noticed a bat in mother-in-law's hand. "Your child's crying is too loud. Make her stop!" she yelled, raising the bat. "Watch out!" In an instant, I shielded my daughter from the impending threat. A sharp pain hit my head and everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was in a hospital bed. My husband was beside me. Holding my throbbing head, I anxiously asked, "Where's Jennifer? Is she okay?" Clinging to my husband, I sought reassurance about our daughter.
"Calm down, Linda. Jennifer's fine. A pediatrician is checking on her right now."
Hearing that she was safe, tears streamed down my face. But my relief was short-lived when I heard the next piece of information. Apparently, mother-in-law had called the ambulance, and her story was outrageous. She claimed she heard a loud noise in the middle of the night, and upon checking our house, she found me lying in a pool of blood. She suggested we might have been attacked by a burglar. Moreover, she had taken photos of the scene and sent them to my husband, who was at work, via WhatsApp. The audacity of her actions sent chills down my spine. What is she talking about? She is the one who hit me, right? Why is she fabricating this burglar story? I can't forgive her. At that moment, I revealed everything about mother-in-law's behavior to my husband. I should have told him sooner. What if something had happened to our daughter? The mere thought drained the color from my face. After hearing everything, my husband was shaking with rage. Despite our agreement to keep boundaries, not only did she break her promise, but she also entered our home uninvited in the middle of the night and tried to assault me because of our daughter's crying. My husband immediately went home to check our security camera footage. I had previously told him about mother-in-law's verbal abuse. Since there was no evidence, and he didn't want to take sides, we had installed a surveillance camera to gather proof. I was planning to check the camera footage and warn my mother-in-law after confirming that she was using abusive language. We never imagined it would capture something like this. The footage clearly showed mother-in-law, bat in hand, attacking me. The camera caught her ignoring my crying daughter, ransacking the room to make it look like a burglary, and even casually taking photos as evidence. Afterwards, it recorded her shaky voice calling the ambulance. Her acting was so convincing that even my husband was taken aback. Of course, we couldn't let this slide just because she's family. My husband handed the footage over to the police. After reviewing it, officers went to mother-in-law's place and took her to the station for questioning. She clearly hadn't expected a camera in the room. Upon realizing this, she exploded in anger, accusing me of deception. "You tricked me! I can't forgive that woman!" she ranted. But I hadn't tricked her. She entered our home, assaulted me, and left our crying daughter alone. Everything was her doing. I hadn't deceived anyone. Still, mother-in-law remained unrepentant, causing a scene at the police station and insisting on her innocence. With the evidence against her, her claims of innocence were futile. We filed a report, and mother-in-law ended up with a criminal record. The incident even made the local news, making her the talk of the town. We realized we couldn't raise our daughter in peace here. With that in mind, we decided to move. So, we decided to move to a high-security apartment. Previously, my workplace was a 15-minute train ride away, but now it's 30 minutes. The commute is longer, but everything we need is within walking distance, and the convenience is worth it. We can raise our daughter here in peace. When we moved, we didn't tell our neighbors where we were going. We feared someone might inadvertently tell mother-in-law, who would then show up at our new place. That would ruin the peace and security we sought, so we kept our move a secret. Naturally, when mother-in-law returned to our old place, she found it empty. We later heard from brother-in-law that mother-in-law had been incessantly calling him, demanding to know our whereabouts, but brother-in-law, knowing her nature all too well, kept our secret. According to brother-in-law, when mother-in-law returned home, she predictably went around the neighborhood asking about our whereabouts. But given the recent incident, the neighbors, fearing for their own safety, didn't engage with her. They didn't want to get involved with someone so unstable. The community here is tight-knit, and no one felt safe with her around. Rumors spread about her erratic behavior. Perhaps hearing these whispers, mother-in-law couldn't bear it any longer. She sold her house and moved away. With the money, she frequented bars almost every night, drinking heavily. Eventually, she became infatuated with a young male staff member and began spending lavishly on him. Apparently because he designated that person and generously opened several bottles, each bill became expensive. Her bills skyrocketed, and before she knew it, she was millions in debt. Yet she believed everything would work out and continued her reckless behavior. But then, disaster struck. Due to her excessive drinking, she collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. The doctor said she needed immediate surgery. After the procedure, she had to stay in the hospital for a while. While in the hospital, she kept calling us saying, "I feel so alone here. I want you to visit me after I'm discharged. I want you to live with me and take care of me." Has she forgotten what she did to me back then? She's been so selfish in her demands. I mean, who would want to care for a mother who hit her daughter-in-law and put her granddaughter in danger? Besides, I've heard that my brother-in-law has a fiancé, and he doesn't want to introduce her to such a dangerous person. After all, we have a restraining order against her because of that incident. Even now I see her, I might collapse from the traumatic flashbacks. For these reasons, no one can take care of her anymore. But she says, "It's been months since then, and I've reflected on my actions, so please take care of me now." I'm sorry, but I can't just move on from that incident. The scars from that time are still fresh. Just because she's remorseful, everything should be forgiven? That's not how it works. Every day, her persistent calls became too much, so I blocked her on WhatsApp and my phone. Given her current state, I doubted she'd hire a detective to find us, so I felt relieved after blocking her. But her persistence hasn't changed. After being discharged, she went to my husband's workplace, trying to find an opportunity to meet him. She was waiting near the staff entrance, and at first the employees thought she was there for a meeting or something. But when she kept showing up day after day, glaring intently, the security guard decided to approach her, and she left. Still, she came back another day, waiting for my husband at the same entrance. This time, the security guard immediately called the police, and 15 minutes later, they arrived and took her to the police station. Turns out, my husband was away for training that day, so she couldn't have met him even if she waited. When he found out, he apologized to his workplace. Thankfully, it ended without any major issues. A few days later, she called me from a payphone, blaming me. "It's all Linda's fault. Because of Linda, this happened. I shouldn't have let him marry Linda. You need to take responsibility and care for me." Why is she blaming me for her actions? It's all her fault. It's wrong to put the blame on me. What are you talking about? Do you even understand the root cause? The past might be the past for you, But it's not for me. I still have scars, and sometimes I can't sleep because of the trauma. I don't want to see you anymore. I don't want to see her. When I said that, she raised her voice. It's because Linda is weak-hearted. When you're married, sometimes you need to forgive. Linda caused all this fuss, and now my life is in ruins. Take responsibility. She was yelling over the phone, but I didn't respond. Previously, my lawyer advised me to record any interactions with her and to screenshot any WhatsApp messages or emails for evidence. So I always had a voice recorder in my bag ready to use. Of course, I reported everything to my lawyer. Perhaps she got a notice from the lawyer because she stopped calling me after that. My husband decided it was the last straw. He called her and warned that if she continued this behavior, we'd call the police again, and then he hung up. Immediately after, we changed our mobile phone numbers. My brother-in-law did the same, and finally, we felt free from her. However, in case of emergencies, we gave our number to my uncle, a former police officer. We trusted him not to accidentally share it with her. Plus, she's always been wary of him, so she wouldn't dare call him. After explaining everything to my uncle, he assured us he'd handle things if needed. Later on, she decided to find a job to pay off her debts. Due to her age, she couldn't find a high-paying job. She tried calling relatives to borrow money, but no one was willing to help. Desperate, she took on multiple part-time jobs to repay her debts. But she struggled with relationships at work and had difficulty learning tasks. She often got yelled at by her younger boss. On a brighter note, my daughter stopped having nightmares. Now she sleeps peacefully, making it hard to believe she ever had such troubles. Perhaps our old home wasn't a comfortable place for her. From now on, I hope for peaceful days with my husband and daughter.